Did you test? Yeah, you're good. I just,
Testing, right? All good. When it's red like that, is that good?
that means it's off the charger, that's all.
Oh, okay.
That's good.
All right, it's 1 o'clock. We're going to go ahead and get started with the Office of Insurance Regulation Chat with Joe meeting. We'll go through the agenda as always. We have the review of the board meeting, occupancy levels. We'll talk about the resident satisfaction survey and some of the things that are being done relevant to the satisfaction survey. Then we'll give an update on our staffing efforts, our recent staffing efforts, and strategic plan update. Then David will give the financial overview. And then Maria and I will go through a COVID update. Then Etta's going to review spiritual life programming and anything else on spiritual life. Okay. And then Samanda's here to do life enrichment, and then we'll take questions and comments. We'd like to start the meeting with prayer. Etta, will you lead us in prayer?
Yes, let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for being our Father, for being our God, for being our guide. God, we ask you, like Solomon prayed, that you would give us wisdom in this. God, we ask that you would give us wisdom in this season, like Solomon prayed, that we can discern what is your will and what is your direction for us, not just as a community, but also in the greater area of Lakeland. Continue to keep your loving hands of provision and your hands of protection all around us. Guide us in all we do, that you may always be glorified as we live out our mission and vision for Florida Presbyterian Homes. It's in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Etta. So for those of you who just got on, for those who are on the phone, hopefully you can hear us okay. We're also live streaming on YouTube and channel 733. This is an Office of Insurance Regulation chat meeting. We provide this OIR meeting every quarter. And so it's a little different than other chat meetings because we do a full coverage on the first quarter or the second quarter financials in this case. And we also go over the recent board meeting that was held in July. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started with the CEO Executive Director report. And I'm going to cover the July board meeting that took place recently. And what we do is we look at all of the committees, the board committees file a report. The board committees that we have are quality of care and services, governance, finance, strategic planning. Those are the board committees. And in this meeting, in the July board meeting, we had a number of motions. In the governance committee presented a motion to the full board to vote on Florida Presbyterian Home bylaw changes. The committee put together a small subcommittee that reviewed our bylaws and noted that the bylaws needed to be updated. There was information in the bylaws that was no longer accurate. So the board went through this process with the governance committee and their task force, and they presented a new bylaws, updated bylaws. And the motion was seconded and approved in committee, presented to the board, and the board approved the changes made to the bylaws. The bylaws changes were primarily just fixing titles, people's titles, like my title, and so on. It was clarifying also the role of the synod. There's been a lot of communication about, what Florida Presbyterian Homes relationship is with the Presbyterian Synod. And what we found in going through the bylaws and looking at paperwork, historic paperwork, what we found was we have a relationship based on the Synod covenant. And that Synod covenant was signed by the leadership at the Synod and by the executive director at that time. And basically what that covenant says is that we need to adhere to the values of the Presbyterian faith and the Presbyterian Church as presented through the Synod, and that we need to maintain communication with the Synod on an annual basis where we share information regarding who's on the board and information regarding any changes that we make in terms of our ministry and service that are significantly major changes to the Synod. So that's what the covenant states, and we needed to update that because the bylaws, as it was stated, had a different relationship structure identified in the bylaws. So that was the most relevant thing that we changed in the bylaws. The next motion also came from the Governance Committee, and it was recommending the slate of board officers and board committee chairs for next year. And I'm going to share that with you now. And so each year, the Board Governance Committee acts as the nominating committee of the board, and they review the board members. They meet with the officer, the board chair, and determine who will be the slate of officers for the next year. So for 2022, the slate of officers that was recommended in a motion to the full board from Governance Committee is Michael Tamney as chair, Katie Piperata as vice chair, Bill Cloyd as treasurer, April Novotny as secretary, and Elena Nicholas as immediate past chair. Elena is our present chair, and one of the changes we made in the bylaws was to recognize the immediate past chair position, and we did that in the bylaw change. So again, Michael Tamney as chair, Katie Piperata as vice chair, Bill Cloyd as treasurer, April Novotny as secretary, and Elena Nicholas as immediate past chair. I would ask the folks that are on the phone if they could please put their phone on mute or silent. Otherwise, the folks on the phone hear background noise during the program. Let me go over just a quick review. Michael Tamney has been on the board quite a few years, and Michael is a financial planner here in Lakeland. Katie Piperata has been in long-term care as a consultant and a recruiter for a number of years, and she has also been on the board quite a few years. Bill Cloyd, as a former VP level executive at an area bank, he's now retired. April Novotny is the clinical leader at Lakeland Regional. She's clinical care services for Lakeland Regional. And Elena, you know, as from First Presbyterian as the business manager of First Presbyterian. So nominated board committee chairs, Michael Tamney to do the CEO Executive Director Performance Review. The Loving Care Committee will be led by Michael Tamney. Historically, it's always been the chair that has done the ED's performance review along with members of the board, and the Loving Care Committee has historically been chaired by the board chair as well. Quality of Care and Services will be Katie Piperata. Finance will be Bill Cloyd. Governance will be Scott Langston. And to be determined on strategic planning, we're still recruiting a committee chair for strategic planning for next year. So that is the slate that was approved by the board in the most recent board meeting. The Strategic Planning Board Committee also had a motion. Their motion was made to accept the 2022 Florida Presbyterian Home Master Site Planning process. The site planning process was developed by myself along with Ron Shuck, who is a board member and chairs our planning committee. And then it was presented to the planning committee. The planning committee reviewed the master site planning process as outlined and approved and recommended to the full board. The full board also approved the planning process. We're beginning to initiate programming exercises on market feasibility, selecting a facilitator to facilitate the master site planning process, but we won't be incurring any costs until next year. You may recall that this year we had dollars budgeted for master site planning, but instead of using them for master site planning, we used them for marketing and brought in Attain, formerly Glenn Devens, to be our marketing company. And they have started. Next year, we'll begin and we'll budget in the operating budget for this coming year, 2022, to initiate a market feasibility study and begin working with the committee, which includes a number of residents are on our master site action planning committee, and they will kick off January of next year. And in finance, the finance committee, this time of year, every 3 years, there's a review of our existing relationship with our accounting firm, Clifton Larson Allen, and it was determined that by the finance committee, and a motion was sent to the board to accept a proposal from Clifton Larson Allen to continue as our audit and accounting firm for the next 3 years, and that was approved. In the remainder of the meeting, Martha Pope, the resident council officer and president, she does a report from the resident council. She gives an overview of things from the resident perspective in the board meeting. And then it's followed by Maria, who gives the administrator's report, which is primarily data and information relative to Porter McGrath and assisted living. And then I give the executive director's report, which is just a general overview of some of the projects that the board is aware of, things that are going on. So that was the July board meeting information. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, I'm now going to go into occupancy level by levels of living. In Porter McGrath, today we were at 51. The occupancy in Porter McGrath is 51. And we've been right around 51 for quite a few weeks now. The budgeted number that we had was 48, but we've been right around 51 for quite a few weeks now. In assisted living, we are at 45. That does include the 5 apartments that were added in the past month. We have those apartments we're now marketing to the external community as well as the internal community, because we have had a very minimal movement into assisted living into that area from our own residents. It's available to our own residents, but since it's been open and prior to that, we've had very little movement. So we want to continue to market that to the outside community. The independent living, we have 9 apartments. We were at about 12 apartments that were available. We're down to 9. Cher is doing a good job getting movement in those areas, and we're seeing some fruit from the marketing efforts. In residential living, we have 3 houses, excuse me, we have 3 houses that are available, and Cher is meeting with people and doing tours of the houses that are available. We have a number that are under contract, so we historically have not had issues with the residential living houses and would assume that we won't have any issues now at this point. The website, update on the website, we have a meeting this week, Skylar and I, with our Attain, formerly Glenn Devens, to look at the website layout and plan that they've put in place, and hopefully we'll have that completed, by the end of this month, early next month. Resident satisfaction survey, we want to go over this, and I'm going to go through management responsiveness, the issue that was brought up in the survey. I'm going to go through dining, and I'll go through briefly life enrichment, but Samantha could speak on that a little bit later as well, as she'll be presenting. Then I'm going to invite Rick to come up and walk us through a PowerPoint. You may remember at the last quarterly meeting, Rick did a PowerPoint presentation talking about environmental services, and residents said they found that very helpful, so we're going to do that each quarter. After that, I'll go through staffing efforts and then review the information on what we've done recently to increase our retention and recruitment. And then I'll give a quick update on strategic plan. Then once we're completed there, I'll turn it over to David, who will go through the financial information. So why don't I get started? Management responsiveness for residential living and independent living residents was an issue that was brought up in the satisfaction survey back in November. We did a follow-up survey of the residents. We only had about 30 responses to the follow-up survey. Primarily, the issue that we were finding from the survey that we received, that follow-up survey, was a lack of accessibility and largely that they don't see me and other managers as frequently as they used to. And I definitely agree with that. I think we've put things in place like the weekly written update and the phone call. But on the phone call that we do every Thursday, it's about 10 people that call in, and quite often it's the same 10 people. So I think that's been part of the challenge. Another challenge that was discussed at the board meeting and discussion with Martha Pope was that we really don't have any document that outlines what is the expectation, what are the process that residents should go through to get issues addressed and to communicate issues. What's the role of the board? What's the role of management? What's the role of the resident council? We don't have any document that formalizes that. And we don't have a document that outlines what are the expectations that residents should expect of management to respond to their needs. So there is a document that's been drafted. It's been sent to the resident council and the board, and it's under review. Resident council in their next meeting will review this with them. It was sent to them. So once we get that codified and review it with our management team, we'll present that to all the residents and move that forward. The communication preference survey, that was a separate survey. That survey was one where we were asking you, how do you want to receive your information? And with the feedback that we've received, we're putting together a document that'll go to Allison, Samantha, Maria, myself, and Janine, Skylar, Carol, all of the people who do newsletters, all the people who communicate with residents via the written word and email. We'll get that out to them so they can update their specific lists. And then Janine will have a master list that will be available to all of those folks that are communicating with residents that they can access to update their own lists. And so that master list will be on the shared drive so people can get their information updated regularly. And we'll follow what you shared with us as your preferences. We'll get that to Etta as well, as I look back and see Etta, because she's doing a lot of communications with residents as well. So we'll make sure that everything that you shared with us will be implemented the way that you requested, and we'll hopefully get that out later this month, early next month. We'll have that out to the team. Any questions on the management responsiveness or any of the communication things that I've talked about? Okay, if not, I'll move on to dining. Dining was another area where we received feedback. Primarily, the feedback from the resident satisfaction survey was about the existing program in dining due to COVID and the challenges of not being in the dining room. So as you know, we were able to open the dining room when the COVID numbers were in decline and moving in the right direction. That was sadly short-lived. I know when I went to the meals in the dining room, people were talking about how much they appreciated it and how the quality of the food and so on. So I'm hoping, at some point we'll be able to get back to that. But as you'll hear later on, the COVID numbers continue to move in the wrong direction, both on our campus as well as Polk County, as well as the state of Florida, as well as the entire nation. So until we see 14 days in a row without having a resident or staff person as a positive, we are on hold at this point. I would tell you relative to the dining program that even after 14 days, Dean and I have talked about how long would it take him to ramp back up. So let's say we clear the 14 days. He said it would probably take him a week to get the food ordered and make sure that everything is set up to begin once we get that 14 days of 0 cases. So we're looking at the earliest, a 21-day turnaround for the 14 days of having 0 positive cases, an additional 7 to get everything geared back up to open the dining room. The thing that he and I also talked about is, well, what happens if, during that last week we get another positive? Well, if we get another positive, the 14 days starts over, and we start over again with the 14 days. And one of the things I'll be talking with the resident council officers about is it better to open and close, open and close? Is that better than just waiting until COVID is fully cleared? And in discussions I've had with residents, a lot of them have, well, the few that I've talked to about 5 so far, that have told me they would prefer that we open, even if it's just for a short period of time. At least they get that period of time to see their friends and break bread with people they care about. So that is something that, we'll be talking about with the council officers and getting feedback on. But at this point, we've had additional positive cases, and so we're on hold, and the 14-day has reset. There is a planning action team, and Dean is going to be scheduling a meeting of that planning action team. Once he and I can get together this week, he'll get that on the calendar. Any questions on the dining as part of the resident satisfaction survey? Okay. Under life enrichment, Samantha is leading a planning action team. They have met, and in their first meeting, it was kind of an overview and just getting to know you and talking about what is good, what's working, what's not working. The second meeting will be a SWOT analysis, getting feedback from the SWOT analysis, strengths, weakness, opportunities, threats. And then the third meeting hopefully will be in a position to start putting together plans. Again, in the satisfaction survey, the primary issues that were brought up in the resident satisfaction survey were residents not being able to get together with other residents through the life enrichment program due to COVID, or residents not having programming that they're used to, such as in the Sixplex and other areas because of COVID. So that's been the primary issue when it came to resident satisfaction survey, was the program changes due to COVID. There is also a task force and action plan team focused on wellness, primarily emotional and physical, and that's being led by Allison and by Teresa Montoya, who is our Director of Social Services. They're leading an action planning team focused on emotional and physical wellness, and they have had their first meeting, and they'll be initiating their SWOT analysis in their second meeting. Any questions on life enrichment? And maybe, Samantha, if you could provide a little more detail than what I had when you speak, that would be great. In facilities, I'm going to invite Rick to come up. One of the things that I've been very grateful to Rick and his team, they've put together a program now where they're measuring their work orders and reporting on the number of work orders. They had that before, but what's different now is they're communicating that to the residents, and they're being proactive and sharing with the residents when power washing's done, when insect management's done, when things are with trees, when those are getting done. That information's also provided in the scoop, so residents are updated on what's happening. And I think that's a really proactive approach. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rick.
Okay, on this first slide, it shows our work orders, April, May, and June. And they're pretty consistent. In April, we did 646 work orders, and in May, we did 535, and June, 533. So we're very consistent with the work orders being called in. And a lot of, some of these work orders are also preventive maintenance. And all the preventive maintenance is caught up right now. They're working on Lakeside Avenue and Lakeside Court this month. And then with the remaining work orders, there's none that are being held right now at this point. So they're all completed. The average work order is taken 30 minutes to 26 minutes to complete. Housekeeping. In April, we did 4,454 pounds of linens. And then in May, we did 4,290 pounds of linen. And then in June, 4,290. And that's for the health center, personal laundry, and then other laundry. And then in contract cleaning, we did 56 homes being cleaned in April. And then in May, we did 54 cleanings. And then in June, we did 58 cleanings. Pest control. Pest control comes out the last Wednesday of every month. And so, but in between, they come out here every Wednesday. So if you have any needs for pest control, please call Lisa at extension 137 and place the work order, and they'll be more than happy to come and treat your place. It doesn't matter if you see one roach or a spider, whatever it might be, they'll still treat it. So whatever you see that is a need, please call Lisa for that. Last month or last quarter, it was brought to my attention that I had Lakeside Avenue in the wrong section, so that's corrected this month. But in odd months, we do Crescent Street, Lakeside Avenue, Terrace Gardens, Waverly Place and Court, Kenilworth, Talley Street, and Lakeside Court. And then the even months, we do Bower Haynes, Four Bunker Manor, Highland Street, Lakeside Avenue, Monty Johnson Manor, Chapel, Garden Apartments, and Holland DeLay, and Lake Hunter. Termites. That's a hot topic this season. We've had a lot of termite issues. We have a superior that comes out and they'll do spot treatments if they can. If not, we'd have to tent your house. This month we do have one duplex that's going to be treated for termites. But if you have any issues with termites, or if you're not sure if it's termites or not, please call maintenance and we will put you on the list for either superior or we'll have it treated for, if it's not termites, we'll have it treated by the another company, our pest control company. Tree trimming. If you have any issues with trees, or if you see anything that's a hazard, a rotten limb or dead limb in a tree, or if it just needs to be trimmed off a house, please call. We have a tree company that comes out once a month. And they do it on a priority basis. So if we see something that is a potential hazard, we'll address that. Or if we're had a bad storm, they'll address the issues that we have out here. But they do not give us a specific time because it's done on their convenience when they're not addressing other issues in Lakeland. But if you have any issues, please call extension 137. Pressure washing. Year to date, we've done 39, or not year to date, but since January, we've done 39 units, either cleaned or spot cleaned. We did 4 over the weekend, and they're working on driveways and sidewalks also. But if you see an issue where it's a potential hazard, if it's slippery or mold or mildew growing on the sidewalk or driveway, please call and we'll address that as soon as we can. We do have 115 houses that we have to pressure wash We try to get to them as soon as possible, but with the weather, we've been having issues with postponing it because we try to address it on the weekends and some during the week. But we do have it washed. Like I said, we did 4 houses this weekend. Is there any questions or concerns that you'd like me to address while I'm up here? No? Okay, moving on to 4 Bunker Manor. 4 Bunker Manor will be pressure washed this Wednesday. It's going to be put in the Daily Scoop tomorrow. I wanted to confirm with them today that they're going to be starting. They approximately said it's going to take about a month to complete this project, depending on the weather. We've had afternoon showers, and it's hard to paint in the rain. So they're going to be, like I said, they're going to start this Wednesday pressure washing. I'll have maintenance going around and helping residents move patio furniture inside their units or move potted plants off the sidewalks. We need to have everything cleared for them to start this project. It's a fairly big project, and like I said, it'll take about a month to complete this job. We had some issues with the lawn mowing company. During the week, last week, they had to postpone it. Along with the following week, they had to postpone mowing because of weather. So if they're not out here on Thursday, they will be out here on Friday. And really, for safety reasons, we do not want them out there if it's raining or if there's a storm out there. But it will be completed within a week's time, but they just have to look out for the safety of their company. So if you have any concerns or issues about landscaping or the mowing, feel free to call myself, and I'll help address that issue with you. Thank you.
Okay, so that's the report regarding resident satisfaction survey. Now we're going to move on to the staffing effort. As we've talked about in past resident chats, one of the biggest challenges in our field is staffing. That's not new. That's something that, for years in our field, when we survey CEOs and executive directors and so on, the number one issue has been labor for about the past 10 years. Well, COVID only made that more challenging. And this is not just our field. If you drive anywhere around, you're seeing now hiring. One of the things that we saw a number of our staff that were leaving for positions with Tico, with Applebee's, with Amazon. The pay rates started to become a major challenge. Our wage ranges started to become a major challenge regarding retention as well as recruitment. So Kim, who is our Director of Human Resources, on an annual basis, she looks at all of our positions and matches our wage ranges to compare them within our industry with our National Association Leading Age, who does a regional analysis, and we're in the Central Florida region, and that analysis is reviewed by Kim and our executive team, and we look at positions to see where we are. We always want to be at around the 50th percentile in wage ranges. Sometimes the market forces you to go a little bit above that, but we don't want to be below that. And so as the market started shifting, some of our competitors started to raise their wage ranges. And we know that by 2026, all organizations in the state of Florida must have a minimum wage of no less than $15. So we had in our budget, the plan was to start increasing $1 or more per year by January 2026 to get us to that minimum wage of $15. The minimum wage that we had was about $10, and that was put in place under David Wilgen when David was the interim executive director here. So the market shifted, and we started to see competitors raising their wage ranges. And so we put together a plan. David, our CFO, Kim, our Director of Human Resources, myself, and our team put together a plan to adjust the wage ranges for hourly staff in key positions such as CNAs, housekeepers, maintenance, dining aides, cooks. All of those were areas where we were struggling with recruiting and with retention. So we put that program in place. We also looked at it and said, is there a way to address compression? Meaning, how do we address the people who've been here for a number of years? And we increase those who are below the new minimum wage. We do that, but they've also been here for years, yet they're getting paid as much as somebody who just started. So David did a wonderful job putting together a plan, a bonus program with Kim and I, looking at this and saying, how do we recognize people who've been here for years? And so what we created was a bonus incentive program that's based on our attendance policy. And so there are 4 different tiers based on the number of years an employee's worked at Florida Presbyterian Homes, and this is just for hourly employees. But we've looked at the tiers and structure. So a person who's been here longer, if they meet all the standards of the attendance policy, which basically means they show up when they're scheduled and they work a full schedule, they will get a bonus, and they will get an increase to their hourly rate through the bonus program. Any employee that is in a performance improvement plan would not have access to the bonus program until they completed their performance improvement plan adequately and successfully. So this new program gives our staff the ability to recruit successfully and to retain people. The idea is the pay wage is where it should be in our market, so we're competitive with the pay wage, but you stand to make even more if you simply show up to work when you're supposed to and work the full shift. So that's where the bonus kicks in, and for those folks that have been here for a longer period, they stand to make more than somebody who's only been here for a year or less, or fewer years based on the tier system. So we've now had that in place for, this is the second pay period that we've completed with this in place. We've made the adjustments to all our existing staff who are below the new wage ranges. Those adjustments were made immediately. We're in the process of working with our Matrix, which is our software provider of Time Tracker, which does our scheduling, to put the bonus program in place. So once that gets in place, we'll be able to see that benefit as well. Kim has shared, and a few managers have also shared, that they are seeing more people. Kim gave a report at the board meeting showing the number of people who applied for each of these key positions prior to the wage increase and the number who've applied since, and it had more than doubled in every position. So we're seeing more people applying now, and we're seeing better retention, less turnover. So hopefully that will continue, and we'll progress towards that as well. We know that COVID has an impact on that, and with kids going back to school, if a child becomes ill, we are going to have issues in staffing of how to cover for the parent that has to be home with their child. If the adult becomes ill and they have to quarantine and maintain their child at home, that will be a challenge. So we know that staffing, the things that we did, had a positive impact. We also know we're nowhere near out of the woods. Our entire country is nowhere near out of the woods when it comes to COVID and when it comes to staffing. So those were the things that we put into place, and David will cover a little bit of that when he goes through his financial report as well. Any questions on the staffing efforts, the bonus program, or the wages? Okay. Strategic planning updates. All but 2 of the action plan teams have met or are on the schedule for their first meeting, so that's moving forward. A lot of probably about half the teams are moving into their second meetings over the next 3 weeks. Again, we're looking at about a 3 to 4 month process, so July, August, September, and hopefully be able to present the plan to the board in their October board meeting. So those initiatives are all moving forward. The largest representative group on these action plan teams is the residents, with 35 residents that are on an action plan team, and about 30 staff members that are involved, and all the board members are involved as well. And we have people from outside, people from Lakeland Regional Hospital, our state associations involved. So we have a really good group that is working on each of these goals, and it's moving forward, very effectively. Any questions on strategic planning? Okay, with that, I'm going to turn it over to David, and David is going to give the quarterly financial overview as part of the OIR program. Dave, do you want to use this or that? Which one? This one works better.
Yeah. I like the magnet. Okay. Take this thing off. So the slides we have to follow will be to look at the quarterly financial results, covenants that we have for the bank, balance sheet, income statement, cash flows, and our outlook. So the first off are the covenants, and I have a trending here for the results ending this second quarter, June 2021. And you can see that for the most part, the ratios, when the debt service coverage ratio increases, that means it's a good thing. What that says is the amount of income that we're generating, how many times it covers our debt service. So, and that includes all the entrance fees we received as well. So it's not entirely operations, but they count that in the mix. So this goes to show 3.34 means that we cover our debt service for a year 3 1/3 times. So we could effectively pay off 3 years worth of debt service. And a short while ago, in September 2020, is only a little bit over 1.5. The main difference between the two are, excuse me, we did receive some government monies to help us in this transition, the PPP loan that was forgiven back in January, and some money from CMS that's been helping that. And we've stuck that away pretty much in savings to, or effectively stuck it away in savings to help us ride the storm, because it is a bit of a storm that we're going to be riding through for the next few months. The debt to net assets ratio, that's effectively a culmination of all the net income over the years. That's essentially equity or debt to total equity. And you want to see this number declining. In September 2020, it was 0.69. In June 2021 is 0.60. So that means that the debt is a fraction or less than 1, and you want it to be less than 1. Actually, the bank requires less than 1.25, but you want it to be less than 1. It just shows the strength of the financials of the community. But as we'll see in a moment, even though our covenants are looking great, you can still have a challenging period of financial activity, which is what we're in the midst of right now with working with this COVID thing. Sorry that slide is half off the, or partially off screen, but what's more important are the middle 2 columns, the left column and the center column. The middle column is the current year. The middle column is June 2021 for the first 6 months. The middle column is where we were this time last year, probably in the middle of COVID. And then the final column is where we were as a snapshot at the audit 6 months ago at 12/31/2020. But probably important to note is total assets are up about $5 million, and that's fixed assets, cash, and investments. Investments have been doing really well. The current period net income, third from the bottom, it shows this time last year, year to date, we were running at $169,000 loss. These numbers are in thousands. But this time, these 6 months, we're at $2.2 million in profit. As we'll show in the next slide what this means. In a nutshell for the operating activity, the operating margin, that middle number, that's our controllable. So we can control the operating revenue, the operating expense. The interest is pretty much a flat line, and then the operating margin. The other revenue and other expense primarily have to do with investment returns, contributions, depreciation expense, and whatnot. And those are things that depreciation is pretty much a constant, but it's a non-cash. But what we can't control are contributions and investment returns. But in this slide, you see $3.3 million was pretty much in investment returns and contributions. But the operating side of it, the operating margin, is at a slight loss, $254,000 for the first 6 months compared to $200,000 this time last year. And I think it's $434,000 net profit, operating margin profit, at the end of 12 months last year at December. So, I mean, our operations have been challenged mainly in census, in all the houses, apartments, assisted living have all been running under budget for census. Health center, actually, these last couple of months have popped up better than budget, and we're starting to see some offsetting to the operating losses in the other facilities. But it has been a challenge, and these numbers do not represent the wage expense that Joe was talking about that we did the adjustment for to get competitive. What that wage adjustment did is it pretty much put us in the hunt with other competitive forces. We aren't by any means over and above. We're kind of meeting what the competition is to the best of our ability. We haven't by any means dropped or brought everyone up to the $15 rate. Like, for example, CNAs, I think we increased $1. So, I mean, it's a noticeable and sizable increase to the staff, but it's not over and above. Like I said, it gets us in the hunt. And what the compression bonus we're hoping will do is put a little bit more of it gives staff an opportunity to make more, but the onus is on them to do that. So as long as they're meeting effectively the performance, they're able to get a little bit more, anywhere from 50 cents to 75 cents an hour more. And that's another program that we're still waiting on our software people to write it, to enact it, but it's coming down the pike. But those numbers will affect, we put that in place July 1st, so we'll be seeing those in next quarter and the quarters following to see the impact for it. And those numbers, if you recall, the wage adjustment was close to about $225,000. That was on an annual basis. And since we put it into effect July 1, it's roughly half that amount is what we'll fill this year. And when we put in the compression bonus, that potentially could be about the same, another 2.25, but that's a 12-month average. And we've obviously started our budgeting process, and we'll put those numbers in as well. But for this slide, the operating is slightly missing budget because of the census has been down. Health center has been picking up, and that's helped to mitigate some of the losses so far. And hope is that we'll be seeing a more steady increase in the census in the health center and pick up for the rest of the facilities. I believe so far, though, this year, we've received more in entrance fees this year as compared to last year, so we have seen an uptick in the movement and the cash flow from it as compared to last year. Cash flows, good thing about this one is it's broken down between the activities from operating, activities from investing, essentially buying property, plant, and equipment, or activities in financing. And we are cash flow positive on the operating side. We're $3 million cash flow positive. And that's from the net income and adding back the non-cash expenses, but the investment returns, or I'm sorry, the life occupancy fees received. Investing activities essentially is the property, plant, and equipment, the refurbishing, the apartments, all the equipment that we're buying just to maintain the place. The net change in limited assets, that's essentially the cash in all of our other investment accounts that are not that are restricted. So for the loving care funds, those have been going up in value. When they go up in value, that's actually a decrease in cash, because it's a decrease in operating cash. It's an increase in restricted cash, but it's a decrease in operating cash. And this is a reflection of the operating cash impact. And then the bottom, financing, is just payments on the bonds and payments on a note that we have for the bus. But overall, even though we're $3 million net cash positive on operations, for the first 6 months we spent, or I guess you could say we went into savings $206,000. That's the subtotal of all the cash flows for the 6 months. So we've gone from $4.8 million to $4.6 million in our available cash. Wanted to throw this in here. This is not by any means a indication of what we're going to do on budget, but it is something to pay attention, that we're paying attention to very tightly, because the budget is driven by CPI. But when we were pulling this up for preparation to budget, we saw that the CPI have been increasing quite a bit since the dip in the supply from COVID, last March, April. But it's risen sharply in these last 2 to 3 months. We have talked with some investment advisors, and they're not seeing that this will be a sustainable. They're expecting that it will drop down to a little bit more reasonable rate. We will keep an eye on this amount because it will directly reflect or directly translate into the budget process for next year. But I believe in, I want to say April, it was a 4.4% increase. May was 5.6, was an annualized CPI, and in June so far, I think it's 5.8 CPI increase. But like I said, there's still a few months before budget's going to be finalized. Finalized won't happen until October, so we'll have a number of months, and we do expect it to taper off or actually reduce, and that will be reflected. That number will be reflected in the budget. But just wanted to show everyone how this COVID system has affected us. The outlook is cautious, but we do have room to maneuver. We do have money in savings to help us get over this hurdle, if you will. Our overall spending is down, quite a bit down from 2 years ago. It did slightly uptick from last quarter, but it is down from last year, about a little bit over almost $3,300 a day. So I mean, if you're thinking about it, $3,000 a day times 365, that's the number in expense that we're down by. Our days in cash on hand are 307 days that we have of cash, compared to 212 this time last year. And there's a little note for what we did when we adjusted the wages. And that's it. Any questions? Thank you.
Just as a kind of follow-up on what David shared, the couple of things on the consumer price index, that reflects what it costs us to get produce for utilities, just about everything, fuel, all the things that are increasing in terms of costs. And usually consumer price indexes, 1%, 2%, if that. So this is very unique. Again, because of COVID and the impact it's having, it's driving up the CPI. But as David shared, hopefully this will even out. But you're seeing it at the grocery store right now. You're seeing it in restaurants. You're seeing it everywhere you go. What the impact is, and so we have to look at how do we budget for that? How do we manage that? David also talked about the number on the bonus program and the wage combined is about $450 in total. That's annualized for the full 12 months. The numbers that are reflected here don't show that, but as he said, they will be reflected in the next quarter's presentation, and we'll look at it in next year's operating budget as well. That is a huge increase, and when we look at the rate increase to the residents, we're factoring all these pieces in, but we also factor in the impact that a high rate increase has on you as well. And we're not looking to put that all on the resident. As you can see in the last chart that David shared, each year we've been able to manage expenses, and expenses have actually gotten lower each year. So we do the best we can in managing expenses. Quite frankly, we've been bailed out on the revenue side, as David shared, through the PPP and HHS and the funds that we've received, and a really good investment market. That's bailed us out. If we operate with the operating budget in the red, the savings that David talked about, he's spot on. That savings will deplete, and all of a sudden our covenants will become challenged. And we can't just do that year after year, operate in the red. So we know that this is a period of time where we see colleagues and organizations and us struggling financially with a rising labor market and wage market, with a lack of staffing and trying to address staffing through agency and so on, and overtime. All these challenges come at a cost. And we'll continue to work on the expense side and do what we can to minimize expense. But that you may see that reflected in some of the operation too. If we can't fill positions in maintenance, work orders are not going to turn around as quickly as in the past. Programming options that historically you've been used to, in order to maintain those programming options, we've got to look at, how do we do that and still maintain our expense budget and not blow the expense budget. If the economy starts to tank on the investment side, it's really going to be a struggle for us. And I've had a really open and frank discussions with residents who we've talked about, what does this mean in terms of the long-term future? And what we have to be able to do is change our scale of operation. If we maintain with the present number of apartments and houses that we have and aren't able to grow and build congregate apartments or housing that can generate more entry fees and generate operating through monthly fees, the scale we have becomes extremely and is extremely challenging to be financially sustainable. So in the strategic plan, we have that master site planning committee. That is an extremely important group. that is going to be focused on defining future development projects, looking at land we already own, looking at our land at the Sixplex and looking at the land at Cannon, where the old nursery used to be, Cannon, New York, and Highland. So we'll be focusing on that. And hopefully we'll do a market feasibility study, and hopefully the market feasibility will say there is opportunity for development. And so that is where our future is really tied to and is extremely important to be in a position to move that forward. There's also a Porter McGrath team that is meeting that includes a number of residents and staff, as well as leadership from the hospital, our state associations, both the for-profit and the not-for-profit state associations, and we're working together to look at how do we redefine Porter McGrath in order for it to be more financially sustainable. I do want to caution, in our field, financial sustainability for skilled care and rehab, we're talking about 1-2% margins. You know, the revenue, the margins aren't huge in skilled care because of the rising cost of labor and higher acuity that we see in our resident population. But we do believe, and this team will work towards getting us to a place where we can improve upon the financial health of Porter McGrath, which will also improve our financial bottom line. And one of the things that Stephanie and Maria and the team and Kim are working on right now is to hopefully get rid of agency, so we don't have agency. And that will be a huge positive to the bottom line if we get rid of agency and minimize overtime. But that's a big challenge with the labor issues that we have in our country and especially in our field right now. So those are just some of the key things that I wanted to just piggyback what David shared, just so residents are hearing the same thing that employees have been hearing and the same thing that board members have been hearing in terms of what we're doing and how we're repositioning for the future. Any comments, questions, or thoughts before we move on to a COVID update? Okay, I'm going to shift some things around. Maria's on her way. I'm going to ask Etta to come up and speak to spiritual life, and then followed by Samantha, and then Maria and I will close out with a COVID update.
Just a few quick words on spiritual life. Continuing to make contact in the community with those who are especially needing visits and feeling lonely and isolated. And I solicit the help of neighbors and other folks on campus to help me with that, either by visiting or making phone calls or getting the names to me of people that you know that might be experiencing a little loneliness in this season. I had a couple people stop me on Sunday to actually bring that to my attention, and so I want to make sure that we're not missing anyone who would love to have a phone call just to check in to see how things are going. Our YouTube and Channel 733 have been great mediums for us to watch the service on Sunday, and we've now changed to using a different microphone, and I got a lot of good feedback on Sunday with that, so we're really happy about that, and we want to thank all of our technicians, especially our maintenance department, for helping us to get that on track. But right now, still pushing forward, still keeping services in line with the season and just listening for the word that God has for our community. I was encouraging groups that I'm talking to, that I'm passing by as I see them talking, that the message from Sunday is that we remain positive, that we spread positivity. It's so easy for us to be negative in a season like this because there's a lot of negative things around us. But we have to remember, as a community, we're called to encourage one another. And so as you're talking in your groups or spending time with your neighbor on the porch or on phone calls with families, make sure you end all of your thoughts with a positive thought and remind them that God is with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Ada. Good afternoon. Just keeping along what Miss Ada said, keeping that positive attitude. What we're doing is trying to maintain our small groups in the health center. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, sorry about that. We're trying to maintain our small groups in the health center as best that we can by keeping them 10 or less in a group. We're keeping them 6 feet physical distancing. So therefore, we are making sure that we're trying not to make no one feel like they're isolated. We're trying to make sure that people are not feeling depressed or lonely. So every chance we get, we do offer the one-on-one room visits. We do the same with the ALF. The ladies are doing a wonderful job going around room to room, just making sure people have activities that's bagged up, that they're passing out snacks, and that they're just meeting and seeing everybody eye to eye. So if you have anyone, like Ms. Elder said, that you think may need anything from activities, from the packets to snacks to just a hello, please give us a call as well. August the 4th in the health center, we did a camp FPH. On the side, Camp Kyle. He did an awesome job getting the team members involved, getting the residents involved. They really had a wonderful time. Miss Elder came out and showed love and support, took pictures. So you'll be seeing some pictures flooding your timeline really soon. They were adorable, and that's what we needed. Even though we were 6 feet apart, they was able to see one another, to laugh, to talk, and have a good time. So that's our ultimate goal, is to keep that and make that very successful. So thank you to everyone. Maria came out at the end, gave out the certificates and awards, and so it was wonderful. Then this Thursday, we have Elder Grove program that's going to be a wonderful program. And I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but we're going to have a little garden that's going to be in the health center on the 2nd floor. And so we're going to have a master gardener, if everything continues to go smoothly, come twice a month to maintain this cart with us. And all we have to do is supply the residents. You can't get no easier than that. So our goal is to make sure we keep our friend, or shall I say not our friend, COVID, away so we can continue to blossom and grow and let the residents feel like they're still part of the community. COVID can't take everything away from us. On the 13th, we have dummy ice that'll be coming out. So please come out and support. It'll be right in the back where our therapy department is. Corner of Lakeside Avenue, Highland Street. So please remain in your distant areas, but if you are on this side, we would love for you to come out and support as well for the dummy ice on Friday from 12 to 1. And then we also will have on August 20th another food truck, but this is a food truck coming out, and that's Tallulah Seafood, and that will be August 20th on a Friday. And unfortunately, we did have to cancel some programs due to the fact of what is going on, because we're trying to keep the safety distance, but we will continue to strive and do our best to keep everybody in contact with what we're doing. And when it comes to our strategy planning program, that's going to start back up August the 23rd. What we're trying to do is meet the 4th Monday of every month, if it works with the rest of our committee. And if that goes on, then we will continue with the SWAT, as Mr. Joe was saying. But our first meeting was like a meet and greet because it was so small. We only had like a handful. So I'm praying on the 23rd of this month, we will have more participants that will join us, and then we can get more deeper into what we need to do for our plan. And I believe that is it for Life Enrichments. Do we have any questions? Any concerns? Thank you.
Thank you, Samantha. So Maria and I will go over COVID information, and I so appreciate how Etta and Samantha focus on the positive, and then followed by Maria and I to talk about some of the issues and challenges. So, as you know, COVID has changed the primary focus of Florida Presbyterian Homes only in the manner of safety. It doesn't change who we are as an organization. It doesn't change how we feel about our residents, how our residents feel about our staff. Our focus and our mission, our ministry is the same, but we also have to maintain safety and recognize that when people around the world are dealing with the pandemic and what we're seeing specifically here in Florida, we need to be focused on the well-being of our residents and our staff as the primary right now. To not do so would be blind and would put people at grave risk. So, as you know, when it comes to residential living and independent living, we've gone back to protocols that we had initiated in the very beginning, very conservative protocols on the campus where we have the north and south separation, where folks living north of Cressup don't come over into the buildings and into programming on the south side of Cressup, and south side of Cressup doesn't come over into the north side. Other than people who want to schedule time in the pool can schedule time in the pool from the south side, schedule that with Allison. You know, obviously, as we spoke earlier, the dining room is closed until further notice. The library is closed on this side of campus until further notice. The chapel is Zoom and 7:33 at this time. No in-person at the chapel, the chat, the academies, or any programming scheduled in the chapel here. Again, this is with the priority and understanding of the residents' well-being as well as our staff. We've made a number of inroads with the formal program to increase the participation among our staff in terms of the vaccine. You'll see a lot of us wearing a pin now that talks about that I have received the vaccine and ask me. We hope that that'll initiate conversation. We've also got a thermometer gauge that measures and that we promote, what the percentage is, and hopefully we'll see increases in that as well. We're right now at about 51, 52% of our staff are vaccinated, so that continues to be a challenge. We are hoping that the FDA will give full use approval of the Pfizer vaccine. It is hopefully by the end of this month they will have defined that, because we have heard that that's one of the concerns that staff has. They're waiting for it to be moved from an emergency use order to a full use order and program. So hopefully that'll help. We are considering a mask or the mandate of the vaccine. That is something we've started talking about. We hope we don't have to get to that point. We're doing everything we can to communicate the importance of staff to protect themselves, their family members, and our residents, why this is important. So hopefully we'll see those numbers of participation go up among our staff. Residents were at, almost 100%. It's about 98% of our residents have received the vaccine. I think we have 5 in residential living who have yet to receive the vaccine. So we'll continue moving in that direction. I'm going to ask Maria to give us an update on the numbers that we have in each level of living and among our staff of positive cases. And as we talked about earlier, every time we have a new positive case, that 14-day resets. And so when we get questions about when will the dining room open, when will the Vol Shop and the Bid House open, when will the chapel open, when will these things open, we stay, with the protocols that we have until we have 14 days in a row where we don't have positive cases on the campus. We also factor in what's happening in Polk County, and Maria can share what the most recent positivity rates are. We track what's going on at Lakeland Regional Hospital, and I think the last time we looked at it, it was over 200 people were in the hospital with COVID, and that they were starting to reach capacity, bed capacity in the hospital. So we know that we're in this period of time. It's significantly a risk period and a challenge, and we're doing everything we can, but we need your help. And the way that you can help is to continue wearing your mask when you're inside, continue social distancing. As both Samantha and Etta shared, if you are having issues or feeling that you just want to talk to somebody, please let us know, okay? I'm going to turn it over to Maria now, who will give us more detail.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, so yes, I guess we left the doom and gloom to the end. Our positivity rate in Polk County keeps increasing, and we are at 22.79. We have, currently, we have 2 independent living residents who are positive. We also have one that is towards the end of their quarantine and residential. We have none in the AL, although we have to, they went through the 10 days, the 2 positives that we had in AL. One has passed the quarantine, the other one is at the very tail end of it, and that's why we were doing outbreak testing for assisted living. The next outbreak testing will be on the 11th, which is this Wednesday. As of last Wednesday, all those that came back were negative. On the 11th, if they're negative again, no further AL residents get positive tests, then we can start opening up AL for communal dining and some activities there. So we're waiting for that testing to be conducted on the 11th. Hopefully everyone gets done during that day so that we can get the results in before Friday and have a message out. In Porter McGrath, we have no positive residents. In Porter McGrath, we have 5 positive employees. Out of those 5 employees, 4 are in nursing or administration, and the other one gets tested with Porter McGrath because they may enter that building. So that 14-day outbreak will continue for Porter McGrath of no general visitation, only compassionate. We do ask that if anyone in the community is a compassionate visitor for anyone in Porter McGrath, that they do come and be prepared to keep their mask on, even if they're in the room. Unless it's a spouse that's eating with them during the meal, they can take off the mask, put back the mask on. CDC has put out, for those that are unvaccinated, you'll see it all over the stores. If you're vaccinated, fully vaccinated, you do not have to wear a mask to enter the store. Only unvaccinated wear mask. CDC has gone back and retracted that and are urging people to wear masks regardless if you're vaccinated or unvaccinated, indoors and outdoors. So we do urge that everyone in the community please wear a mask when they're going through the buildings and going to visit anyone, going to offices, to please maintain that mask. We are continuing our testing. Again, for Porter McGrath, with our positivity rate, we will continue testing twice a week. We do that on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And the outbreak will mean for Porter McGrath that we will be testing vaccinated as well as unvaccinated until the outbreak portion ends. Once that ends, we will only test unvaccinated individuals. So I can't urge you any more than what we have already. Wear a mask, avoid social gatherings, be patient with us. I know that it's been a long 18 months and that we were seeing the trend down and starting to open, but this surge is also hitting younger people. I'm concerned what that will mean to our workforce that's already strained with school opening up, masks not being mandated, and if some of our employees are single parents, or even a married couple that one just can't take off and one of them has to stay home with that child. And the school system has not changed since last year. If a child is in a home setting that has positive cases, they have that child out for 24 days. So that would be a huge strain on our workforce. We are urging our employees to consider taking the vaccine if they have not, reaching out to Guardian Pharmacy to see how quickly they can put those vaccinations in the hands of our nurses, so we don't have to wait for the monthly clinic, but any individual that may want to have the vaccine can just go to our nurses. So that's in the horizon, but it's not official yet. And, like Joe said, waiting to see for the FDA approval for the Pfizer, and just urging everyone to stay safe. Any questions? Thank you.
So with that, concludes today's meeting. Are there any other comments or ideas or thoughts or questions or anything else that residents would like to touch base on now? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for being with us. And if you, at any point, need to talk or want to talk to anybody, please reach out to any one of us, and we will follow up and make sure that you're getting the support you need. This is definitely the most challenging period of time, and as Maria said, we were thinking, okay, things are starting to open back up, but the thing that will get us through this is getting through it together and working together as a community. And that every man for himself really doesn't work well with the pandemic. So it really is important that we reach out to each other and help each other through this. So thank you for your patience, and continue to be well. Amen.